Good afternoon, everybody. If it's okay, I'm going to get started on my presentation. I'm Andrew Bateman. I'm with Trisure. What we're going to do today is we're going to talk about claims on HOAs, on their insurance programs. We're going over 7 main topics. A little bit about myself is myself and my partner, Kim Angeli, we specialize in working with homeowners associations. We insure over 700 homeowners associations. What makes us different is 2 things, is our ability to review HOAs and put foreign language of an insurance policy onto one page, onto a spreadsheet, so you could easily review and compare. And the secondly is the willingness to go to board meetings. I have a sick need and like of going to board meetings. It's just one of those things. I do travel the state. I put just under 32,000 miles on my car last year. It's going to be that same this year. We're going to talk about claims examples, and the biggest thing that we're going to end on is what is the result if a claim is denied by the insurance. This is going to go pretty quick, very interactive. If you have any questions, please. It makes it more fun for me also. General liability gaps. One of the biggest things, of course, is having low limits. Well, the second, where the claim comes from, is somebody feels or believes that the community was negligent. We have had people walking on sidewalks that have fallen into the 2-inch hole that is bigger than a signpost, have fallen and made claim against the homeowners association. They felt that that was negligent on the homeowners association. Cracks in sidewalks. It's unbelievable what people will make a claim for. So your general liability is you have to be proven negligent or sued for negligence for that general liability to cover it. Sorry about that, was quick. The 3 Ps. Anybody guess what the 3 Ps are? I'm not going anywhere till I get at least a guess on the 3 Ps.
Personal property.
No, I want Tom to give me the first guess. Thank you. Now we're on to the same thing. But yes, you're correct on that. The 3 Ps are your biggest liability areas: pools, ponds, and playgrounds. So I didn't give you a lead in on that one. So excellent. I like the participation. But it's 3 Ps. I also include parks, which are like dog parks or anything like that, that is set aside, that is association property that encourages people to go to. You'll get neighborhood kids hanging out there. You'll get kids from outside the neighborhood hanging and playing on that gazebo. You want that covered. Property gaps. Well, this is the biggest thing, is how do you know if your property is properly insured? Properly insured means, is it overinsured? Is it underinsured? Or is it what it should be exactly? The only way to determine that is an insured to value report. An insured to value report takes that structure and those buildings, looks at its construction based on building costs in that zip code, and turns it into an exact per square foot replacement cost. Now, as a manager, you have this information. You have just transferred the risk to the insurance company properly. If a community board gives that information or the manager gives that information, they have accepted that risk. If it is wrong, the board is responsible or the manager is responsible. The only proof that you have is an insured to value report. This is 5 buildings, $8.8 million, and it's the whole community has $115 per square foot replacement cost based on 77,000 square feet. It is the only way.
Who does the report?
Your insurance agent will provide that for you. The question was, who provides that report, the insured to value report? your insurance agent will do that. If the insurance agent says, oh, I don't know how to do that, you hang up there's the one time I allow you to hang up the phone. You need to find an insurance agent that can. Fatal gaps in your directors and officers. Well, there's many. We're going to talk about one. Non-monetary lawsuits. Well, a non-monetary lawsuit is the #1 lawsuit against a board. Well, I truly believe we live in the greatest country in the world. No question. We have military that protects our freedoms every day. We need to make sure we're not taking them for granted. But we live in the greatest country in the world. And we are free, home of the free and the brave. Here's my but. We live in an HOA. You have signed on to those covenants. You've waived many of your rights to do what you want to do. So, non-monetary lawsuit is when a homeowner possibly brings it to the Architectural Review Board, and the Architectural Review Board says, no, you cannot have that 6-foot fence. And they sue the board, not for money, but to be allowed to put that 6-foot fence in. Well, there's a neighbor that has a 6-foot fence. Well, that 6-foot fence is theirs for their service animal, and they've got a special allowance for that one home to have it. But you're still going to get sued for that. It is when somebody has wanted to do something, the board has said no based on the covenants, and they sue to be allowed to do that. Townhomes. We had an $87,000 paid insurance claim for a gold door in a townhouse. The person that lived there was dating a underemployed attorney that had way too much time on their hands. And it was $87,000 in defense cost. They did lose, but the person kept their gold door for 14 months. The question was, in the covenants, they're vague and not precise. What is the process, and what would somebody like myself recommend after reading these covenants? The covenants, only 2 things that can be done is you meet with the board and decide, we need to clarify this. You get an opinion from Adam Bowden at Warden Smith. Secondly, is that you could rewrite the covenants on how you want them worded by Adam Bowden at Warden Smith.
And the board you have to have it.
And then the opinion does not need to be ratified by the population. A change in an amendment to the covenants would have to minimally 2/3 of the, or based on what the covenants say. Everything is or based on what the covenants say if it's stronger. Make sure that your D&O has coverage for non-monetary lawsuits. It is the #1 exclusion on endorsed policies. Crime and fidelity. Has everybody heard of employee dishonesty? Okay, employee dishonesty is what is given in a package policy. It is good, and it covers the board members, and sometimes it'll cover volunteers, but it only covers named board members. Crime and fidelity policies have a broader definition of who is covered. You want the board members covered, you want committee members, volunteers, spouses, managers, you want accountants and bookkeepers, and if a third party, say a cleaning person, comes in and steals that information. If I was a board member, I had account information in my office, and they stole that information, the account numbers, and started stealing money there. Employee dishonesty will not cover that. Crime and fidelity will. So with crime and fidelity, the biggest thing is getting the broadest definition possible. And it's not even a cost issue, it's a definition issue. Umbrella gaps. We're coming back to those 3 Ps, the pools, the ponds, and the playground. The least expensive way to raise your liability, your general liability, is to increase your umbrella limits, okay? If you do have a pool, a pond, playground, parks, clearly, I highly recommend you have an umbrella. Well, where the gap is in umbrella coverage is make sure that your umbrella will cover over the D&O also. If your umbrella is written properly, it'll cover over the general liability of any company that is A-rated or higher, and also over the directors and officers also. So you don't need a higher limit on your D&O. Your umbrella, properly written, will do that for you. Volunteer exposure. This is an all-day seminar that we could talk about workers' compensation. Workers' compensation is a very hot topic in North Carolina. There's legislation that is going to hopefully pass this fall. But as of today, the workers' compensation law does state that the associations are required to carry workers' compensation. I do not push workers' compensation based on the fact of the law. I push, if you want to use the term, or recommend workers' compensation for boards that are highly active, if they do a lot of volunteer days, or if the board is in a condominium and the person is changing light bulbs. Because if an attorney can prove that the board member was working for the association, the general liability will deny that medical claim. So with workers' compensation, all I can say is you talk to your insurance professional about each and every individual homeowners association. It is not a blanket, everybody should have workers' compensation. It is on a community by community. If your agent says, hey, your community does not need workers' compensation, that's the craziest thing I ever heard. They're non-compensated employees. There shouldn't be workers' compensation. Just reach out to somebody that does specialize in working with homeowners association. That is either your attorney or a specialist insurance agent like myself. Volunteer exposure, those are the community action days. You just got to make sure that if somebody does get hurt while working at a volunteer day, that there is coverage. Your general liability can exclude that injury, so be careful of that. Here's my big summary. At time of claim, of course, it's too late. We just went through 6 of the 7 coverages for an association. I think, all right, here's a question for you. For the board members that are here and the managers, how many manage or live in a townhome or condominium? Do you guys, that managers, do you have managed townhomes and condominiums? Okay. The 7th, for me, is one of the most important. This is the unit owner's coverage. What should that unit owner be carrying as insurance? Well, the number one way to avoid all claims in all situations in a homeowners associations when it comes to liability is communication. You have to communicate clearly what the association is covering and what is the responsibility of the unit owner. It has to be outlined clearly. You don't want to be scrambling at time of claim, because at time of claim it's, Mike, thank you very much. It's too late. That's right. So it is all written based on the covenants. If you're doing a review, you make sure you send the covenants to your agent that is reviewing it, because also at time of claim, the adjuster is requesting the covenants also, and they're going to pay the claim based on the covenants. So you need to make sure to clarify, well, are the walls covered? So are they finished, unfinished, unfurnished? Is it based on builder turnover? Is it based on upfits and betterments? Or is it all inclusive? If you cannot answer all of those questions clearly and concisely, you need to. Yes, the question was in regards to a builder's turnover. We're 20 years down the line, and what is the cost of the original unit if they had carpet? It's been 20 years since that carpet was put in. Well, what is allowed is increase per square foot for the carpet, and it's got to be determined by the board on an annual basis.
Really?
Yes. That is how many covenants are written that clearly, but if they're not, that is how it should be determined before you have claim. All you need to do is do it once, and then updated every year.
If this hasn't been done and you're 20 years in.
It is time to do it now. It does take work. What you do is then you do a responsibility chart. A responsibility chart says exactly what the association is responsible for, what the unit owner is for, and this is what builder's turnover is going to look like. It's very important to set that so there's no question, so that unit owner's insurance agent that is writing the HO6 or the HO3 for the house is doing it correctly, including the right amount of property and the difference in the gaps. The question is who do you find is responsible typically for foundations? Well, it's going to come based on the insurance section of the covenants, but when it says in the maintenance section also, it may mention foundations there. But when it comes to the insurance, foundations normally are not covered. And if it's a builder's issue, well, that's a whole separate issue. But in insurance, usually do not insure the concrete on the ground. The question was in regards to a responsibility chart. As an insurance agent, can I sit down and help the board? What I do is I have an Excel spreadsheet that just outlines, it's in general terms. But the answer is no, I cannot. I help. But the board has to make these decisions on the responsibility chart. Yes, we're going to take care of this. No, we're not going to take care of this. And if there's any cloudiness or if the board does not want to do it, the only other person that can do it is an attorney. The question now is getting a second eyes on that responsibility chart. Because that responsibility chart will be, it's a great way to communicate with the unit owners. So they know, because the number one thing is always windows. Well, what's included in a window? Is it the sill? Is it the sash? Is it the inside? Is it the outside? It is nightmarish going forward. But if it's determined and outlined clearly, there's not a problem going forward. Any questions? Well, I want to say thank you very much because you guys made my presentation interactive. I appreciate the questions. We are going to have a little question and answer after. So thank you very much. I'm Andrew Bateman with TriSure.